following the McKinsey research.
Just a question, please.
Yeah, when you mentioned the Wukou system, and of course the purpose of urbanization is to create the domestic demand to balance the economy, the rising Chinese middle class. But you know, I like to illustrate the question because otherwise you won't. It's difficult to understand. The other purpose is really to absorb the excess labor. Now, but with the Wukou system, you're creating an urban divide, in the cities. So my question is that. How would you see that the Wukou system would be altered or changed? And I say this is because this is included in the latest 460-page World Bank report jointly undertaken by the Development Research Center of the State Council. And as you said, Li Jiaqang is a strong supporter. So my question is that how soon would the Wukou system be changed?
We'll take some questions first and then we'll give it back to the panel. The gentleman there in the middle, please.
Yeah, my question was to Dr. Ahluwalia. It's regarding what would be the plans to address the low-cost housing in India in terms of the inclusive growth?
Thank you. Gentleman sort of diagonally behind him.
Yeah, Thomas Sepchik, you centered most of your comments on how to manage cities. My question is, isn't one of the bigger challenges, the relationship between cities and the countries they're in, basically the decoupling of cities and countries, and the fact that more and more cities care less about the countries they're in. They start to cooperate with other cities. So the Shenzhen model is probably going to be happening by default, basically by de facto city-states. If you could comment on this. Automatic urbanization of our world back to Middle Ages in Italy or so.
Okay, question here on my left, please.
Thank you. Sean from Peking University. Dr. Romer mentioned a couple of times about rules. One big rule in China is the one-child policy. My question is, are you worried about the average age increasing in China is going to lead to restraints in demands and growth? On the other hand, India, with already a big population, and the population is still growing, are you worried at all about the overgrowth of population and it's going to lead to problems in urbanization in terms of infrastructures, resources, and employment?
Okay, we'll take one final question, then I'll give it back, but very brief, please.
Yeah, do you agree that one of the solutions is to build green and low carbon model cities and retrofit existing cities with proper master plan and system integration together with green buildings, smart grid, electric vehicles, cleaner production, renewable energy, etc. That will bring down the cost. Could that be one of the solutions?
Great. So I'll take one more question then. Yes, gentleman there who has the mic.
Just very quickly, I was wondering for Ishara Ahluwalia, I remember hearing a lot of talk in India about the reluctance of people to move between states. And I'm wondering, if the China experience is of, as you know, huge numbers of migrant workers in these cities. Is that an outcome that's acceptable to India? Is that an outcome that's even realistic for India as it urbanizes?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just ask, starting actually just from the reverse order, and just go back to my panel and just go back in reverse order. So shall we, if on any of these issues, and then we'll just bring it back here.
Well, actually, I don't have much comments. I think the key is what Paul and Michael all mentioned, that is how to really get the institutions right, in the sense that if you think about it, don't try to think about the democracy, all this. Think about how a city like Hong Kong operates. How the property rights are defined, and how the property rights are exchanged, and how the disputes are resolved. If you think about from that angle, a lot of confusions, will actually be reduced, and we're just trying to get things done. and sort out all these rules, including the rule about the land, about mobility, about all these practices. That's all I would try to emphasize.
Paul?
Let me respond to that general question about affordable housing. I think it's a very good rule in answering any question about cities. If a proposal requires charity or government subsidy, just forget about it. It's just completely irrelevant on the scale of 3 to 5 billion people. So if you want to address something like affordable housing, there's got to be a way that somebody can make a profit by supplying affordable housing to people. And when you look at, for example, in the towns around the official urban areas in China, you see lots of affordable housing that's provided for profit. Mm-hmm. And what we need are systems of rules that make that a much more common, regular process. Mike raised a point as well about this issue of kind of what environment might relatively autonomous cities operate under. And it's clear that you need either a national or even an international kind of environment that constrains certain kinds of behavior. In the near term, we are going to face this problem that there's just vastly more people who want to go to cities than there are room for in cities. We can expand cities as fast as we can, but the excess demand for city life is going to be incredibly high. What this means is that in China with hukou, in Hong Kong with the temporary Filipino maids, in Dubai with the Bangladeshi workers, all of these cities are responding to this demand for city life by forcing the immigrants to live as second or third class citizens. And I think it would be good as sort of at least a global norm, perhaps even something we can put a little more force behind, that we just simply rule that as just unacceptable. That every city should adopt this mandate, this goal of equal protection under the law, and we not allow these second and third class citizens who come in on these very adverse conditions.
Misha?
Let me start with the point made by you, Paul, about new cities, greenfield cities and all. What we are actually seeing in India is that at the periphery, when a city is expanding, through zoning changes and all, in those expansions we are seeing some very good experiments of proper town planning, whether it is the town planning schemes in Gujarat, or in some cases where even the farmers, when they've learned that there is going to be urbanization and there'll be a change of zoning, that they have formed a development company, and there is at least one case in Pune of a town called Magarpatta, where the farming community came together, and today if you go into Magarpatta, this was set up just about 15 years ago, you'll think you are in Virginia. I mean, it's, and better, because it's actually an eco-city. They do everything right by environmental standards. So we have that example also, but somebody asked about the problem of affordable housing. See, the problem is not of any one segment. The problem is that we have not had spatial planning matched with the growing requirements of the economy. So if you don't plan your transport right, if your urban planning is not transit oriented, if you don't include reservation of land for low income groups as part of the approval for towns and cities, which I believe the US has done, UK has done it in its own ways. If you don't do that, then given that we don't have the Hoku system, and and we are only at 30% urbanization, and we are going to bring about this major structural transformation, you can imagine that when 200 million people move into the cities and towns of India in the next 20 years, we are going to create slums in these cities unless we plan for it. And that's the message that we are taking to state governments, to the government of India, to proactively facilitate. So affordable housing will be a very important part of it, but it is much more than that which is needed. if we have a strategy to facilitate and accommodate urbanization. There's one other point that I'd like to make. We have been trying on affordable housing. You know, the government is trying in resettling slums or in redeveloping, moving slums from this area to there, to give property title to the slum dwellers, get them bank finance, and so instead of one little hut in which they may have been living in some corner, they now have a X thousand square feet, whatever, or X hundred square feet, two-room places to live in. But the problem there is that there is a moral hazard problem. There is an intermediate class that has come up whose job it is to register people as slum dwellers, get them a property title, and then find a way of extracting the rent and use them to go squat on another piece of land and try and get. So I think we are not in the situation of Brazil, where you have 80% urbanization, so whichever way you somehow solve the problem, at least you don't have this flood coming in. So that today we have something called Rajiv Awas Yojana, where the government is trying to do it such that these people become bankable. You know, they also have skill development, they find jobs, they can repay. But this is a very new scheme, and we have to make sure, the jury is still out, we have to see if it works and does not create moral hazard for those who really save and then go and take a mortgage and, you know, buy a little thing. One final thing I would like to say here is that in my talk I did not emphasize this, and I think it's relevant, Paul, to what you say. Land market in India is so distorted, and we have had a Land Acquisition Act under which we've had public acquisition, when government can take acquisition of land by paying very little for public purpose. Now, over the years, you know, this has been misused, and today, after what we have seen in West Bengal and, you know, a couple of other places, there are actual plans for cities, new cities that were all ready, but they have been held back, because until we come up with a new Land Acquisition Act, until the political atmosphere really becomes more straightforward and there is greater transparency and enforcement of rules, any politician finds it very difficult to say, I'm going to take this land and I'm going to build a city. Because especially since a lot of these things are done with public-private partnership, even if you do competitive bidding, even if there is transparency, there is so much to answer for, that this will need a little bit of settling down before we can go in for that. However, in our dedicated rail freight corridor that we are doing, there are, along the corridor where investments are coming, and there are investment regions that have been developed, there are plans for new cities. If I recall correct, about 12 new cities. So that's an area where, you know, what you say, you know, can be done. But the truth is that until we sort out the distortions in our land market, it is really going to be a major problem, not just for urbanization, even for industrialization. Thank you.
Mike?
Could I just say one point? I think this is the fundamental difference between China and India, is that China has government ownership of the rural land, and we know there are protests about this use, but you can assemble large parcels of land for urbanization, and India does not. And this Land Acquisition Act is the make or break issue for your future.
Mike?
So I can be really brief. I believe the hukou system will actually disappear relatively soon for two reasons. One, it won't be needed. And second, it's a major source or a contributing source to social tensions, and that is a major priority in China. So I think it's probably lived its usefulness, and and well, there may be some foot dragging. The Italian city-states frequently went to war. I don't think that's probably within the rules that we're contemplating for intercity interactions. So I'm not so worried about that. But I do think, in response to your question, I think that we will get under something that vaguely sounds like what Paul's doing, but without the full apparatus, we will get a kind of entrepreneurial version of what you just described. We'll get experiments within cities, areas that are companies will build complexes, developers will build complexes that are highly livable and highly energy efficient, frequently carbon neutral. This is the bottom-up, sort of version of this. It will. There's policies that would make it go faster, but I believe that will be, in the right environment, a really quite important part of the sustainability agenda.
Professor Highway.
Well, I'm not so optimistic about hukou system being abolished as Mike. The reason is the real issue behind the hukou system is the fair treatment. For example, education. So as long as you don't have such ability to provide enough education or other social welfare system, so city will be reluctant to give up hukou system. So what we are doing now is gradually. For example, you get a green card first instead of after you live in the city how many years. And also we kind of release the small city first. But again, the problem is most of people don't want to go to a small city. They want to go to Shanghai, Beijing, bigger city. So in the short run, I think it's easy for small city to release, abolish the hukou system, but it's still difficult for the bigger city. So fundamentally, I think it's a long term. The government should look at overall how to make a balance of the social welfare, even not just economic job opportunity, also the education system. Our education, higher education, very concentrated on bigger city. Why people want to go bigger city? Not only for their own job, also for their children in the future, go to university. Like Beijing, 100 universities, Shenzhen, only 1 university. So this is one of the concern. People want hukou in Beijing, not necessarily one in Shenzhen. So from the long-term point of view, the government have to think overall how to balance the education resources and also healthcare resources too. So not so easy. That's why I said, especially for the bigger cities.
Thank you, Professor Hyben. With that, I'm going to actually close the session because we are into lunch territory. Let me just start by disclosing, by just thanking each of the panelists, Shah Gang, Paul Romer, Ahluwalia, Mike Spence, and Hai Wen, for really a wonderful presentation. And I think we're going to just have a little group picture with all of us standing.
I'll send you an email that I got right.